Imagine opening a catalog, choosing a house, applying for a loan, and waiting for thousands of numbered pieces to arrive by freight train. Sears did not just sell Americans the things inside their homes. For a time it sold them the home itself. And some customers did not order one house. They ordered enough to build an entire neighborhood. A Sears house was not a publicity stunt or a strange product hidden in the back of a catalog. It was part of a real product line. Families could choose from pages of cottages, bungalows, farmhouses, duplexes, and large suburban homes. Each design came with a drawing, a floor plan, a name, and a price. A family could sit at the kitchen table, compare the rooms, choose a porch, and order the house they hoped to grow old in. Sears sold tens of thousands of these homes. Then someone placed the order, and the house had to begin moving across the country. The house did not arrive at the front door. It arrived before the front door existed. Most kits traveled by freight train to a station near the buyer's property. When the freight car opened, there was no completed house inside. There were stacks of lumber, crates of hardware, doors, windows, shingles, flooring, trim, and everything else needed to begin construction. From the station, the load continued by truck or horse-drawn wagon. Then every bundle had to be unloaded and sorted before the first wall could go up. Delivery day was not the moment the family received its new home. It was the moment the real work began. Fortunately, Sears had already done much of the measuring. Many of the wooden pieces arrived cut to length and marked so builders could match them to the plans. Instead of beginning with raw lumber and measuring every board, they worked from an organized system. A single house could contain tens of thousands of parts. It was part Amazon delivery, part IKEA project, and several months of hard labor. The system saved time and lumber, but this was still a real construction project. A mistake did not mean taking apart a bookshelf. It could become part of the house. Walls had to remain straight. Floors had to stay level. The roof had to survive years of storms, snow, and heat. The plans could show people what to do. Human hands still had to do it, and many of those hands belonged to the people who would eventually live there. Some families hired an experienced contractor to manage the entire project. Others paid carpenters for the difficult work and completed smaller jobs themselves. Brothers, cousins, neighbors, and friends might help carry lumber, raise walls, install trim, or paint the finished rooms. The future owners did not need to build every part alone, but they could take part in turning a shipment of materials into their own home. Sears did not promise that building a house would be easy. It promised that ordinary people could understand how it was done. Understanding the advertised price was sometimes more difficult. The amount printed beneath the catalog drawing could look astonishingly low, but it was not the total cost of moving into the house. The buyer still needed land, a foundation, local building materials, transportation, utilities, and the labor required to assemble everything. Plumbing, heating, paint, bathroom fixtures, and changes to the original plan could push the final cost higher. The catalog price bought the main parts of the house. It did not buy the ground beneath it or every hour needed to raise it. Even so, the finished result could be far more impressive than the words kit house suggest. Sears did not only sell small cottages or plain wooden boxes. Some models had wide porches, tall columns, large living rooms, formal dining rooms, built-in cabinets, fireplaces, decorative windows, and grand staircases. One of the most famous models, the Magnolia, had 10 rooms, 2 bathrooms, 2 fireplaces, and a staircase that would not have looked out of place in a mansion. Once completed, a Sears house did not look temporary or prefabricated. It looked like any other well-built home because that is what it had become. A house ordered from a catalog did not have to look like a box. Some looked like the grandest home on the street, and Sears was willing to help customers pay for one. For part of its home-selling era, the company offered financing. That meant the same business could advertise the house, provide the plans, sell the materials, arrange the shipment, and lend the buyer money. At a time when mortgages could be difficult to obtain, Sears offered some families financing for the materials and, in later years, parts of the wider building project. For people living far from major banks or rapidly growing cities, the catalog became more than a place to shop. It could also become a route into homeownership. Sears could sell the dream, ship the dream, and lend you the money to pay for it. But that convenience also created risk. When families fell behind on payments, especially during the Great Depression, Sears became their creditor as well as the company that had sold them the house. The mortgage business eventually ended. By then, Sears had already discovered that some buyers wanted much more than a single home. The company once promoted its houses with a catalog titled "One House or 100." That was not just a clever slogan. Developers, employers, and industrial companies could order groups of homes for new streets, worker housing, or growing company towns. A factory needed employees. Those employees needed somewhere to live. Instead of designing every house separately, a company could order several proven models and have the materials delivered by train. The houses did not all have to be identical. Different plans could be mixed along the same street. Then the years changed them. Owners added rooms, enclosed porches, replaced windows, and painted the siding. Trees grew, roads were paved, cars replaced horses. What looked like an ordinary neighborhood could actually be a catalog brought to life one house at a time. And the house itself was only one part of what Sears could supply. A family could order the tools used to build it, the furnace in the basement, the stove in the kitchen, and the furniture in the living room. Sears could also provide the bathtub, the curtains, the family's clothing, the children's bicycles, and even the garage beside the house. The same company could be involved before the foundation was poured and long after the family moved in. For Americans living far from large stores, the catalog opened a world of products that might not exist locally. Amazon sells almost everything. Sears tried to sell an entire way of life. Pieces of that life may still be standing in towns across America. Thousands of Sears houses have been identified, but many more may remain unnoticed. Finding one is not as simple as matching an old house to a catalog drawing. Other companies sold similar kits, and local builders often copied popular designs. The strongest evidence is usually hidden. Researchers look in attics and basements for stamped numbers on wooden beams. They search for old shipping labels, blueprints, order forms, letters, or mortgage records connected to Sears. They compare floor plans, room measurements, windows, chimneys, roof lines, and porches. Sometimes the clue appears during a renovation, hidden behind a wall or beneath an old staircase. A family may have lived in the house for generations without knowing that its walls once arrived in a freight car. The catalog may be gone. The station may be closed. The people who placed the order may have disappeared from living memory. But the house remains. Sears did not simply mail Americans a home, it mailed them a plan, a mountain of numbered materials, and the belief that an ordinary family could turn both into a place of their own. The strangest part is not that people once ordered houses from a catalog. It is that many of those houses are still standing long after the catalogs, the freight trains, and the world that built them disappeared.